Okay, so welcome to another deep dive with me.
And me?
Today we are focusing on habits that can negatively impact your confidence.
Yes. Very excited about this one.
Me too. And we have a great source for this one. We're looking at a YouTube transcript from the English Leap podcast on the Speak English with Class channel.
Yeah, a really popular one.
It is. Yeah, it's a good one.
A lot of great information there.
And this particular episode is called How to Build Confidence from Scratch.
Catchy title.
It is, yeah. So their episode dives into the everyday habits that can erode your self-belief sometimes without you even realizing it.
Yes, those sneaky little things.
Exactly. And so our mission is to kind of extract the key insights from their discussion to help you really understand these habits and how to address them.
Yeah, I think that's important. Sometimes we don't realize how these little habits are really affecting us.
Yeah, exactly. And so hopefully through this deep dive, we can figure that out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. So the discussion actually features two hosts named Evan and Aaron, and they explore various subtle and overt habits that can undermine self-confidence in everyday life. And they're really good at using personal anecdotes and examples to illustrate their points.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so relatable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we also have the added bonus of a vocabulary and phrase breakdown by someone named Charlotte in the transcript, which we'll sprinkle in as we go.
Okay, great.
So should we just jump right in?
Let's do it.
I think so. So Evan and Aaron really kick things off by emphasizing how easily your confidence can be undermined, not by like these massive failures necessarily, but just those consistent little things we do over and over again.
Yeah, like death by a thousand cuts.
Exactly. And the first area they zoom in on is something that I know I have personally struggled with, and I'm sure many of our listeners have to.
Yeah.
And that is worrying about what other people think.
Oh, yeah, that one's a biggie.
It is. And it can be so debilitating.
It really can. And what's interesting is how Evan and Aaron bring this to life with these really relatable scenarios.
Yeah, totally.
Like, for example, Aaron shares a moment in a meeting where he had an idea, but he hesitated to voice it because he was worried about being judged.
Ooh, I've been there.
Right. And then guess what? Someone else said the exact same thing and got all the credit.
Oof, the worst.
It is. And it's that feeling of regret that really, I think, hits home for a lot of people.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I should have just said it.
Exactly. And the real insight here is that constantly seeking external validation will always leave you feeling insecure because your sense of self-worth becomes dependent on something you can't fully control.
So true, because you're always at the mercy of other people's opinions, which
Yeah.
are constantly changing.
Exactly. And it's exhausting, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It takes me back to high school, trying so hard to fit in, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this.
Yeah, those awkward teenage years.
Exactly. Both Aaron and Evan even admit to, like, changing their behavior and interests just to be accepted.
I did that, too.
Oh, yeah. What did you do?
I pretended to like heavy metal music, even though I secretly preferred pop.
Oh, that's funny. Aaron actually talks about pretending to be a rugby fan.
Oh, wow. That's even worse.
I know, right? Like, come on. man.
But, it's funny now, but it really shows how much energy we can waste trying to be someone we're not just for approval.
It's so true. And if we think about that in a broader sense, that constant need to please others is really distracting you from understanding and valuing your own genuine beliefs and desires.
Yeah, you're so busy trying to figure out what other people want that you forget about yourself.
Exactly. And as Evan and Aaron touch on in the podcast, you can end up living a life that isn't truly yours, which inevitably breeds insecurity.
Right, because you're not living authentically.
Exactly. So a crucial takeaway here is the importance of identifying your own internal compass, like what truly matters to you.
And how do you do that?
Well, that's where some self-reflection comes in. I think sometimes journaling can be really helpful for that.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, just taking some time to really think about your values and what's important to you. And Evan and Aaron even recommend, like, literally writing those things down.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder that trying to please everyone is a losing game because it's simply impossible.
It is. You can't make everyone happy all the time.
You can't. And so this all really gets to the heart of authenticity. Like when your actions align with what you genuinely believe in, it builds a much stronger sense of self from the inside out.
So living authentically isn't just about being true to yourself. It's a powerful foundation for lasting confidence.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So let's move on to another subtle but significant confidence killer that Evan and Aaron talk about, and that is negative thinking. That relentless inner critic.
Oh, yeah. We all have that voice in our head sometimes.
Oh, yeah,
It
constantly.
can be so mean.
So what's interesting, though, is that both Evan and Aaron share personal stories of actually shifting their negative thought patterns,
Yeah.
which gives me hope.
Yeah, me too, because it shows it's possible.
It does. So For example, Evan talks about his experience with learning guitar, something he initially thought he would never be able to do. I know, right? But he actually did learn to play the guitar, and he talks about how he had to challenge those initial "I can't" feelings and actually change his mindset.
So that's inspiring.
It is, and the crucial first step is becoming aware of those negative thoughts as they pop up. Just noticing them without judgment.
Yeah, I think that's key, becoming more mindful of our thoughts.
Exactly, and it doesn't just stop at noticing them.
Right.
You have to actually do something with those thoughts.
Yeah, what do you do?
Well, Evan and Aaron talk about consciously choosing to replace those negative self-statements with positive ones, what they call positive affirmations.
Like instead of saying, I'm so bad at this, you say, I'm learning and I'm getting better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Evan's journey with public speaking is another great example. He used to be terrified of it, but he actually used positive self-talk to improve his skills and his confidence.
That's amazing.
It is, and it really shows how powerful this shift in internal dialogue can be.
But it's probably not easy.
It's not. It takes time and effort and patience, but the rewards are worth it.
Yeah, I think it's about retraining your brain to think more positively.
Exactly. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's become a huge part of our lives in the digital age, and that is social media comparisons.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is, because we're constantly bombarded with these curated versions of other people's lives.
Yeah, it's all about the highlight reel.
Exactly. The perfect vacations, the perfect bodies, the seemingly flawless lives. And it's easy to fall into the trap of comparing ourselves to those images.
Yeah, and feeling inadequate.
Exactly. What's fascinating is that Evan actually shares a quick story about spending an entire hour trying to get the perfect photo of his breakfast for Instagram.
Seriously, an hour for breakfast.
I know, right? And it just shows the huge gap between what's presented online and the often messy truth behind it.
Like behind the scenes, there's probably a sink full of dirty dishes.
Probably, and a very hangry Evan.
Yeah, exactly. So the key here is to remember that social media rarely, if ever, shows the full picture.
It's all smoke and mirrors.
Basically, and everyone, no matter how perfect their feed looks, experiences challenges and struggles that they often don't share online.
Yeah, everyone has bad days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basing your self-worth on these filtered glimpses is inherently damaging.
And it can really erode your confidence because you're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel.
Exactly. And so a key strategy here is to actively limit your time on social media.
Yeah, set some boundaries.
Like maybe designate specific times of day for scrolling or set timers on your apps.
Yeah, I've heard that can be really helpful.
It can. And also remember to be more critical of what you see. Don't just take it at face value.
Yeah, remind yourself that it's not the complete truth.
And instead, focus on your own personal achievements and progress, no matter how small they might seem.
Yeah, celebrate your own milestones.
Exactly, because that's what truly matters.
Okay, let's move on to the last of these subtle habits that Evan and Aaron discuss, and that is rumination, that endless loop of replaying past mistakes or negative experiences in your mind.
Oh, that's a dangerous one.
It is, and we all do it.
I know, I've spent countless hours replaying awkward conversations in my head.
Me too. It's like torture.
It is, and Aaron gives this perfect example of saying something in a meeting that he thought was silly and then just not being able to let it go.
Oh, yeah. I hate when that happens.
And then Evan talks about his most embarrassing moment tripping on stage during a performance.
Oh, no.
I know it's something we'd all rather forget, but the point is that we tend to dwell on these negative experiences.
And it's so unproductive.
It is, because it doesn't change anything.
Exactly. And the real danger, as Evan and Aaron point out, is that this constant dwelling on past missteps can breed a fear of future attempts.
Yeah, you start to avoid putting yourself out there because you're afraid of making another mistake.
Exactly. And that ultimately holds you back from growth and from trying new things.
So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
In a way, so how do we break free from this cycle of rumination?
Well, Evan and Aaron suggest actively focusing on finding solutions and learning from your mistakes instead of just dwelling on them.
So like asking yourself, okay, what can I do differently next time?
Exactly. And it's also important to practice self-compassion.
Being kind and forgiving to yourself.
Yes, because everyone makes mistakes,
But it's part of being human.
and it's how we learn and grow.
Exactly. And another helpful tip is to focus on the future. Set new goals, even small ones, and take those first steps forward.
That's a good way to shift your mindset from the past to the present.
It is, because dwelling on the past is not going to help you move forward.
It's true. So let's recap what we've covered so far. We've talked about those subtle, almost unconscious habits that can chip away at your confidence.
Yeah, things like worrying about others' opinions,
Mm.
negative thinking, social media comparisons, and rumination.
Right, and now we're going to shift our focus to some everyday habits that might be a little more obvious but still have a significant impact on how we feel about ourselves.
Exactly. And the first one is self-deprecating talk.
Oh, that's a common one.
It is. A lot of people use humor in this way, but it might actually have a hidden cost.
Interesting. Tell me more.
So what Evan and Aaron do is they draw this distinction between negative thinking, that internal monologue of self-criticism, and self-deprecating talk, which is when you actually voice those negative thoughts out loud, often in the form of a joke.
So it's not just thinking, I'm so bad at this, but actually saying it to other people.
Exactly. And the problem is that this outward expression, even if it's meant to be funny, can actually reinforce those negative beliefs both for yourself and for the people around you.
So it's like you're programming yourself and others to see you in a negative light.
Exactly. And it can really damage your self-esteem over time.
Yeah, I can see that.
So Evan and Aaron suggest being much more mindful of how we speak about ourselves and actively shifting to more positive and growth-oriented language.
So instead of saying, I'm terrible at presentations, you might say, I'm working on improving my presentation skills.
Exactly. It's a subtle but powerful shift in mindset,
I like that.
and it can really make a difference in how you feel about yourself and how others perceive you.
Okay, so let's talk about another everyday habit that can hold us back, and that is the blame game.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
It is, and it's so easy to fall into this trap of blaming external factors or other people when things don't go our way.
It's like her default mode sometimes.
Right, but what Evan and Aaron emphasize is that while external factors can certainly play a role, consistently blaming others prevents us from taking responsibility for our own actions.
And that lack of ownership ultimately hinders our personal growth and erodes our confidence because we feel like we're at the mercy of external forces.
Right, it's like giving away your power.
Exactly. And the key here is to recognize that taking ownership is actually empowering.
It is, because it means you have the ability to learn and grow from your experiences.
And make changes.
Exactly. So instead of blaming traffic for being late to a meeting, you could reflect on what you could have done differently to manage your time better.
Right. And that's a great example of the strategy that Evan and Aaron suggest, which is to ask yourself, what could I have done differently?
It's a simple question, but it shifts your focus from blame to learning.
And that can be really empowering.
Absolutely, and it's a much more constructive approach.
Okay. The final everyday habit that Evan and Aaron discuss is setting low expectations.
Interesting.
It is, because sometimes I think we hold ourselves back by aiming too low because we're afraid of not meeting a high standard.
Yeah, that fear of failure can be paralyzing.
It can. And it can lead us to set these really low expectations for ourselves.
Like, I'll just try to get by.
Exactly. And the problem with that is that it limits our potential and prevents us from experiencing the boost of confidence that comes from striving for and achieving challenging goals.
Right, because if you don't set the bar high, you'll never know what you're capable of.
Exactly. You're essentially selling yourself short before you even begin.
So how do we break out of this habit?
Well, Evan and Aaron recommend setting goals that are realistic yet challenging.
So finding that sweet spot.
Yes. Targets that push you slightly outside your comfort zone, but are still achievable with effort.
I like that.
Yeah. And they also emphasize the importance of celebrating your progress along the way, no matter how small the steps might seem.
Yeah, recognizing those small wins is crucial.
It is, because it reinforces that positive momentum and keeps you motivated.
Okay, before we wrap things up, I want to mention that the transcript we're looking at includes this really helpful section where Charlotte breaks down some of the key vocabulary and phrases that come up in Evan and Aaron's discussion.
Oh yeah, that's a great resource for our listeners.
It is, especially for those who are learning English as a second language.
So let's just touch on a few of those definitions to make sure we're all on the same page.
Okay, great.
So Charlotte starts by defining confidence simply as a belief in yourself and your abilities.
That's a good starting point.
It is. And then she clarifies habits as those regular actions that we often perform without conscious thought.
Right, those automatic behaviors.
Exactly. And the phrase, without even knowing, really highlights how some of these confidence-eroding habits can be happening on autopilot.
Yeah, we're not even aware of them.
And then she explains the concept of being our best selves, which essentially means acting in the best way that we can. And the idea that these habits can undermine our confidence, meaning weaken that belief in ourselves.
And holding us back is another important one, meaning preventing progress.
Right. And that Charlotte connects these definitions to the discussion by explaining seeking approval, that desire for acceptance from others and how it relates to worrying about what people think. And she also defines self-doubt, that feeling of not believing in yourself, which is what we're trying to overcome.
Right. And she also clarifies fit in, that need to belong, and the potential downsides of living someone else's life instead of being true to ourselves.
Exactly. And then when it comes to mindset, she defines negative thinking and the power of positive affirmations.
And she explains dwelling on negative experiences, the impact of self-deprecating talk, and the difference between setting low expectations and striving for excellence.
Right. And finally, she touches on the idea that taking ownership of your actions can empower us, the importance of reflecting on our experiences, and how even small achievements can boost our confidence.
Wow, that's a lot of great vocabulary.
It is, and I think it's really helpful to have those clear definitions in mind as we think about these concepts.
It really reinforces the idea that small shifts in our awareness and our language can make a big difference in how we feel about ourselves.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive today, let's just recap what we've learned.
Okay.
We explored those subtle, often unconscious habits that can erode our confidence, like worrying too much about what other people think, negative self-talk, getting caught in the comparison trap of social media, and ruminating over past mistakes.
And we also looked at some more overt everyday habits that can hold us back, like self-deprecating humor, blaming others for our problems, and setting low expectations for ourselves.
And as we've seen, these habits can have a significant impact on our self-belief and our overall well-being.
So I guess the question now is, what do we do about it?
That's a great question, and that's what we want you to think about as we leave you today. Which of these habits resonates most strongly with your own experiences right now? And what's one small, concrete step you can take this week to start shifting that habit and building a stronger, more resilient foundation of self-confidence?
Because even small changes can make a big difference over time.
Exactly. And remember, be patient with yourself. It's a journey, not a destination.
That's right, and we're all in this together.
So let's keep learning and growing together.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
See you next time.
Bye.